Imagine a dirt bike rider accidentally gets zapped back to the Wild West and has to outrun cowboys who think his Honda is some kind of demon horse.
Some kind of wheel machine.
If that sentence doesn't perfectly capture the beautiful insanity of early 80s B-movie filmmaking, then you clearly haven't experienced the fever dream that is Timerider, The Adventure of Lyle Swann. This is the movie that dared to ask, what if Back to the Future, but with more dirt and fewer DeLoreans? And before we get started, be sure to like and subscribe. It really does help the channel.
I mean, why are those guys shooting at me like that?
All right, let's rev up our engines and dive into this time-traveling motocross madness.
Hey, you okay?
Let's talk about the premise, because Timerider exists in that magical early 80s window, when studios would greenlight literally anything if you could pitch it in one sentence that combined two popular things. In this case, someone clearly walked into a meeting and said motocross plus time travel, and somehow walked out with actual money to make a movie. The year 1982 was peak weird for sci-fi cinema. You had Blade Runner redefining what the future could look like, E.T. making everyone cry about aliens, and The Thing making everyone terrified of literally everything. Into this landscape came Timerider, a movie that decided what audiences really needed was Fred Ward on a dirt bike accidentally riding through a time portal during a motocross race and ending up in 1877 Arizona territory. The premise is beautifully straightforward. Lyle Swann is a championship motocross racer who stumbles into a secret government time travel experiment while out riding in the desert. One electromagnetic pulse later, he's dealing with outlaws who've never seen internal combustion and think his motorcycle is either magic or demonic. The government scientists back in 1982 are frantically trying to bring him back, while Lyle is just trying to survive in an era where his biggest technological advantage is also the thing that makes everyone want to shoot him. What makes this concept work is its complete commitment to the fish-out-of-water comedy. This isn't a movie trying to make profound statements about destiny or causality. It's about a guy in racing leathers trying to explain fuel injection to people who consider telegraph poles cutting-edge technology. The film embraces its B-movie roots while delivering surprisingly solid action sequences and genuine laughs. Let's break down the cast, because Timerider assembled exactly the kind of character actors who could sell mystified cowboy encounters dirt bike with complete sincerity. Leading the charge is Fred Ward as Lyle Swann, and honestly, this might be the role Fred Ward was born to play. Ward had that perfect everyman quality that made him believable as both a professional motocross racer and a guy who could adapt to the Old West without completely losing his mind. He's got this natural ruggedness that works whether he's wearing racing gear or cowboy boots. And he delivers lines like, "This thing runs on gasoline, not hay," with the kind of deadpan timing that makes the absurd premise work. Ward would go on to bigger roles in Tremors and The Right Stuff, but there's something pure about watching him navigate 1877 with nothing but his wits and a Honda. Belinda Bauer plays Claire Scene, the saloon girl who becomes Lyle's unlikely ally and love interest. Bauer brings genuine warmth to what could have been a thankless woman in the Old West role. And she has real chemistry with Ward, even when the script makes them fall in love faster than Lyle's bike goes from 0 to 60. Her character actually gets to be smart and resourceful, rather than just standing around waiting to be rescued. The real scene stealer is Peter Coyote as Porter Reese, the outlaw leader who becomes obsessed with capturing Lyle's devil horse. Coyote plays Reese as genuinely menacing, while still allowing room for the comedy inherent in a 19th century bandit trying to understand 20th century technology. His interactions with the motorcycle are comedy gold, treating it like it might bite him at any moment. The supporting cast includes L.Q. Jones as the grizzled Carl Dorset and Richard Masur as the scientist desperately trying to retrieve Lyle from the past, both bringing that character actor reliability that makes even the wildest plot points seem plausible. Analysis? Now let's talk about the technical aspects, because Timerider proves that sometimes the best special effects are the ones that don't try to be too special. This movie had a modest budget and knew exactly how to use every dollar for maximum impact. The time travel effect itself is refreshingly simple. Just some electromagnetic distortion and a flash of light. Then suddenly Fred Ward is dodging tumbleweeds instead of checkered flags. There's no elaborate time machine or complicated scientific apparatus, just a government experiment gone wrong at exactly the wrong moment. This simplicity actually works in the movie's favor, making the time travel feel accidental and organic rather than overwrought. Where the movie really shines is in the practical stunt work. The motocross sequences are genuinely impressive, with real riders doing real jumps and real crashes in real desert locations. Watching Lyle navigate Old West terrain on a modern dirt bike creates these amazing visual contrasts. Sleek, modern machinery, kicking up ancient dust while cowboys on horseback try to keep up. The chase scenes have this kinetic energy that you can only get from actual vehicles and actual stunts, no matter how many millions of dollars you throw at CGI. The period details are surprisingly solid for a B-movie budget. The Old West sets feel authentic rather than like a theme park, and the costumes look lived in and real. The production took advantage of existing Western movie locations and infrastructure, which gives everything a genuine frontier feel. The contrast between Lyle's high-tech racing gear and the rough-hewn 1877 environment creates most of the movie's visual comedy without needing elaborate effects. Let's dive into the scenes that make Timerider the beautifully weird time travel adventure it is, because this movie delivers moments that perfectly capture the collision between eras. The opening motocross race sequence establishes Lyle as a genuine professional while setting up the time travel experiment. There's something wonderfully mundane about watching scientists set up their equipment in the background while Lyle focuses on winning his race, completely unaware that he's about to become history's most confused test subject. The moment when the electromagnetic pulse hits, and Lyle suddenly finds himself surrounded by sagebrush instead of spectators, is played with perfect matter-of-fact timing. But the real magic happens with Lyle's first encounter with the locals. Picture this. You're a cowboy in 1877, and suddenly this figure in strange armor comes roaring out of the desert on a mechanical beast that sounds like a thunderstorm and moves faster than any horse you've ever seen. The movie milks this culture clash for everything it's worth, with the cowboys' reactions ranging from terror to fascination to outright hostility. Ward plays Lyle's confusion perfectly. He's trying to be friendly while slowly realizing that everything he knows about the world has suddenly become useless. The saloon scenes where Lyle tries to blend in are comedy gold. Watching him attempt to order a beer while wearing full racing leathers, then trying to explain concepts like internal combustion to people who think kerosene lamps are high technology, creates this perfect fish-out-of-water humor. The movie never mocks either era. It just lets the natural comedy emerge from the situation. The chase sequences are where Timerider really comes alive. Watching Lyle navigate canyon walls and desert terrain on his Honda while being pursued by cowboys on horseback creates these amazing action scenes that feel completely unique. The visual of a modern dirt bike jumping over a covered wagon is the kind of image that sticks with you forever. Let's talk about the audio landscape that makes Timerider such an unexpectedly effective piece of entertainment, because the music perfectly captures the movie's dual identity as both Western and sci-fi adventure. The score, composed by Michael Nesmith, yes, that Michael Nesmith from the Monkees, is this fascinating blend of traditional Western themes and early 80s electronic music. Nesmith brings his pop sensibilities to create a soundtrack that somehow makes synthesizers feel at home in the Old West. The main theme has this driving, adventurous quality that works whether Lyle is racing through the desert in 1982 or 1877, creating musical continuity across the time periods. What's brilliant about the score is how it shifts perspective depending on whose point of view we're following. When we're with Lyle, the music has these modern, electronic elements that represent his technological advantage and his connection to the future. But when we're with the cowboys, the score leans heavily into traditional Western instrumentation, harmonicas, guitars, and that classic frontier sound that immediately places us in their world. The contrast between the roar of Lyle's Honda and the ambient sounds of the Old West creates its own kind of music. Every time that motorcycle engine fires up, it's like a synthesizer cutting through an acoustic folk song. The sound designers understood that the bike itself is basically a character in the movie, and they make sure its mechanical voice stands out against the natural sounds of wind, horses, and frontier life. Let's dig into the production stories that somehow resulted in this glorious time-traveling motocross adventure, because the making of Timerider is filled with exactly the kind of creative problem-solving that makes B-movies so endearing. Director William Deere came to this project with a background in commercials and short films, which explains why Timerider has such tight pacing and visual storytelling. Deere understood that the premise was inherently ridiculous, so he focused on making every scene as entertaining as possible rather than trying to justify the science. His approach was basically embrace the weird and make it work, which is probably the only way this movie could have succeeded. The casting of Fred Ward was a stroke of genius that almost didn't happen. Ward was primarily known for supporting roles at this point, and several bigger names were considered for Lyle. But Ward's natural motorcycling skills and his ability to look equally comfortable in racing gear and cowboy boots made him perfect for the role. He did most of his own writing, which gives the action scenes an authenticity that no amount of stunt doubling could achieve. Michael Nesmith's involvement as composer and executive producer came through his post-Monkeys media company, Pacific Arts. Nesmith saw the potential in the script's blend of genres and helped shape the movie's tone. His experience in both music and television production brought a level of professionalism to what could have been a completely amateur effort. The desert locations in Arizona and California provided both stunning visuals and serious logistical challenges. The production had to coordinate modern film equipment with period-accurate sets while dealing with extreme heat and the constant presence of actual motorcycles and horses. Several scenes had to be reshot when the sound of helicopters, used for aerial shots, spooked the horses during crucial takes. One of the most interesting production decisions was to keep the time travel explanation deliberately vague. The script originally had much more exposition about the government experiment, but Deere wisely cut most of it, understanding that audiences would accept the premise more readily if it wasn't over-explained. Sometimes the best sci-fi movies are the ones that don't try too hard to be scientific. Now let's talk about what happened after Timerider hit theaters, because this movie's journey from quirky theatrical release to beloved cult classic perfectly illustrates how some films find their audience in unexpected ways. When Timerider opened in 1982, it was essentially dumped into theaters with minimal marketing and no real expectations. It was competing against massive blockbusters like E.T. and Blade Runner, and unsurprisingly, a low-budget motocross time travel movie got completely overlooked by mainstream audiences. The film made barely a dent at the box office, earning less than $1 million during its brief theatrical run. Critics were largely indifferent, with most reviews treating it as a harmless curiosity rather than anything worth serious attention. But then something beautiful happened. Home video saved Timerider from complete obscurity. Throughout the mid-'80s, this movie became a staple of video rental stores, sitting in that magical section between sci-fi and action where browsing customers would stumble across it and think, well, this looks interesting. The cover art, featuring Fred Ward on his Honda with the Old West stretching behind him, perfectly captured the movie's unique appeal. Kids and teenagers especially gravitated toward it, drawn by the promise of motorcycles and time travel delivered in one convenient package. The movie's cult status really solidified in the cable TV era. Channels like HBO and Showtime needed content to fill their schedules, and Timerider's unique premise made it perfect for lazy weekend afternoon viewing. There's something about discovering this movie by accident that enhances the viewing experience. It feels like finding a hidden treasure that most people don't know about. What's remarkable is how well Timerider has aged compared to other early 80s sci-fi films. While movies with elaborate special effects from that era often look dated, Timerider's practical approach and character-driven humor remain completely entertaining. The Culture Clash comedy feels timeless, and Fred Ward's performance has this effortless charm that works just as well today as it did 40 years ago. So there you have it. Timerider, The Adventure of Lyle Swann. The movie that proved sometimes the best sci-fi comes from the simplest ideas executed with maximum heart. Did you discover this gem during a late-night cable TV session, or are you just learning about Fred Ward's greatest motorcycle adventure? Drop your favorite time travel movies in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more deep dives into the beautifully bizarre world of 80s B-movie magic.